So press is beginning for season 2 of The Last of Us on HBO. And so far, it is not looking good. It's coming out in April. And everything they have said so far about the plot is not promising. This is turning out to be already a dumpster fire.
Here's the problem. It's been like a gazillion days since the last season ended and Bella Ramsey's like 3 years older and nobody cares anymore.
Yeah.
The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. Much like with Velma, nobody cared about season 2. Nobody even cared about Rings of Power season 2. I don't know how much people are going to care about The Last of Us season 2. I think there's an actual discussion we had, and I know I'm kind of going off on a mini tangent early, about some of these studios that get a hold of these IPs. They need to find management that will put time constraints into the contracts. Like, if you're going to sign up for this, we're going to get it done, and then we're going immediately into season 2.
Yeah.
Because we cannot, like, we're not talking about some show that they took a risk on that nobody's ever heard of. We're talking about IP that's worth an exceptionally large amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're talking about Rings of Power, or we're talking about The Last of Us, or any of these things that are based off a video game, a movie, or a really famous book franchise, you want to do more than one season, right? So get to it right away so that Bella Ramsey isn't 30 years old by the time she has to play her in season 2.
Right. Theoretically, if they're planning on a season 3, it should already be in the process of filming. But when they asked about it in this interview, they were like, oh, yeah, I keep forgetting that there's going to be a 3rd season. Haha.
Network TV does
Insane.
22 episodes a year, and they do it 9 months out of the year, every year. They actually call it summer vacation for the actors.
The pilot episode of the 1st season of The Last of Us was an hour and a half long. I'm tired of this. So this was from a longer form interview in Variety. The showrunner, Craig Mazin, as well as the creator of The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann, sat down to talk about this. So they had a lot to say. A couple of highlights here. They're putting the character of Joel in therapy in the 2nd season. They're also talking about their choice for casting Abby, the central antagonist in the story. But we'll get to that. Craig Mazin said to the audience, one of the notes that I resent the most is, we loved this thing. More of it, please. No, you love it because it's the right amount of it. When you do more, what makes it special starts to dissipate. It becomes comfort food. And if there's one thing about The Last of Us, it is not comfortable. So they have to rug pull you. They have to subvert your expectations.
Wait, what does he mean by that? Like the right amount of it, like the right amount of episodes?
He means basically you're not going to get the story that you're familiar with in the game. You're not going to get more screen time of Joel and Ellie because that's what you want. And we're going to subvert your expectations and give you what you don't know you want yet.
Ooh, I hate that.
That's what he's saying, and he's very self-important about it. Neil Druckmann also said, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. It does. But I think you have to have a certain level of success to have the confidence to do what we're doing, both in the game and in the show, because on paper it looks so risky. But this is where I love working with Craig because he thinks like me. This is literally the meme that's like two dumb bitches telling each other, exactly. That's Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann in this interview. They then feign ignorance when the 2nd season's massive twist is obliquely raised. The twist being, I will say it because the game has been out forever now, Joel dies. Joel gets murdered in the game by Abby, the central antagonist. They're not willing to talk about it because they're taking so many creative liberties. They don't want to show their cards too soon. Mm-hmm. But they clearly understand the tightrope they have to walk while adapting this game for TV.
It is fair.
They must satisfy fans in the know while still captivating a larger audience who are watching with fresh eyes.
It is fair to point out that he actually may be right in this context because we make fun of and criticize Pedro Pascal all the time. He's still the only one that borders on like an above average actor in that show as a main character. Bella Ramsey is not. keeping him alive can only benefit you. And nobody, like, it's one thing to talk about following the game in the continuity when it's one that everybody liked. It's a whole different ball game to talk about gaming continuity when it's one everybody hated. So maybe this is the time that you break from continuity, keep him alive because you've already paid for him. You might as well get all the exposure you can out of Pedro Pascal. I'm sure he does not come cheap. This is the time to break from continuity. This is the time to pretend like you're like nobody actually wants to watch Joel die.
No,
they don't.
They didn't want that in the game.
In context here, I actually think he's right. I don't think that anybody wants to watch it, and I think they're terrified of trying to make a show where Ellie and Abby are alone. And Caitlin Dever is a fine actress. She is. If you haven't seen her in Justified, you should watch that. Season 2 or 3, very, very good. But that is not the same thing as having like an anchor to the show who can actually pull a good performance when it's needed.
We have a 20 from Cesario JPN. Neil Druckmann, trying hard to be part of the Hollywood elite, is snubbed at an awards show, and his favorite questionable muscle-bulking, non-binary femme character is miscast as a more realistic girl.
They talk about that in this interview. They talk about whether she was able to embody the character in a way other than the physical.
Yeah.
Also, that I guess Brock Lesnar just wasn't available to play
get
Abby.
there. Even if the showrunners stayed faithful to the second game's twist, they also still introduced significant changes. Craig Mazin marvels at how willing, even eager, Neil Druckmann has been to deconstruct a story he's devoted so much of himself to bringing to life.
They love
Quote,
deconstruction.
He understands the value of invention, reinterpretation, addition, change.
I hate all of that.
So basically, Neil Druckmann doesn't care about the story.
This is the problem that I think that the best example of how bad of an idea deconstruction is the Star Wars, the 6 through 9 of Star Wars, specifically Episode 7. Was the Last Jedi, I think, was the one. It was absolutely terrible. The whole, all three of them had problems, but the director, I forget his name, his whole desire was to do unexpected things and to take, and he said himself, deconstruct Star Wars. J.J. Abrams, in the first one, or in Episode 9, it wasn't great because it was just a rehash of Episode 1. That's what Disney wanted. And it was definitely a Mary Sue. Like, she was, flying the Millennium Falcon and winning. She beat her main antagonist at the end of Episode 6. Like, come on, you can't do that. But either way, so it was bad to start off with. But he left a story to be told. And then, I forget the guy that did the second.
Rian Johnson.
Rian Johnson, yes. Scumbag Rian Johnson. He just ruined it. And his point was to deconstruct. He said he wanted to deconstruct it. And it totally destroyed the whole. He ruined the third movie because of it. And
well, that's actually, I hold him responsible for making a bad movie. I hold Kathleen Kennedy and management responsible for not outlining an actual plan for 3 movies rather than like making one movie, making another movie, and then being like, crap, we got one more we have to make. Like, how do we finish this?
That's fair, but the J.J. Abrams, the first one, Episode 6, like, he at least left. He gave a blueprint. You kind of knew
they
where it was
should have just let
going.
him make all 3.
They should have, absolutely. But
they would have been
like
mediocre, but they wouldn't have had the backlash that the other ones did.
Mediocre is better than terrible. Like, they ruined the franchise. And finally, Kathleen Kennedy's getting, taken out of the position of authority at Disney. But I mean, look at how much they destroyed by subverting the expectations of the viewer. You have to do some degree of fan service.
Should have just hired the people that did Cobra Kai.
Well, Cobra Kai was good for like 3 seasons, I think.
It finished the show just wrapped season 7 and it finished very, very strongly from both critics and fans.
Yeah.
So in individual interpretations aside, people that watch Cobra Kai don't look back and say, wow, that ruined Karate Kid for me.
Well, they hired Craig Mazin because he previously was the showrunner on Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if he can deconstruct Chernobyl.
They have to approach all of these things with a critical lens.
It's terrible. It's so awful.
So
because to do that, you have to take you have to have something actual, like an actual story to tell. And even though these stories are kind of formulaic when they're the hero's journey or whatever, that's the reason that you have these kind of handful of stories that are retold and retold, is because they're compelling to people. So you at least want to stick with the blueprint, figure out some way to be, to approach the story in a fresh way, but you still want to have something that is compelling to human beings. And these stories have lasted so long, these frameworks have lasted so long because they're compelling. It's the same thing with songs. Like, it's cool if you want to write a piece of music, but the reason why there's so many songs that kind of do a similar have a similar format is because it's compelling to people.
In an age where The Walking Dead got plenty of good seasons before people started to turn on it.
4, maybe.
4 or 5, and some people like a couple of the later seasons before it went off the rails. This shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't. I mean, they ran out of source material in The Walking Dead midway through as well, right?
Yeah, they also just should have kept at least the first 2 seasons only on the first game, but they decided to fast forward to the second part, which is insane. But yes, Joel does in fact go to therapy in the second season of The Last of Us. This is confirmed by Variety. They share an abiding confidence in storytelling instincts, like casting Catherine O'Hara as Joel's therapist in the Jackson, Wyoming community where Joel and Ellie have lived for the 5 years since the events of Season 1's finale, something that Craig Mazin has wanted them to do from the start. Pedro Pascal gave a statement to Variety. There was a scene early in Season 1 where Joel met with a therapist in the QZ in Boston. I found it a beautiful way into the character and the walls that are guarding his traumas and losses. His trauma? The scene
Brutal.
was ultimately cut before Pascal got to shoot it, but Craig Mazin always intended to return to the idea for Season 2, saying therapy is a fantastic mirror to say not just what are you really thinking, but what people are refusing to talk about. I don't even know what that means.
I love the idea that there is a therapist. Because look, that's a fantastic market. Everyone has trauma. Most of the therapists are dead. Like, you're like the one-stop shop for mental health services because the world is over. How many rounds and how many rations does an hour of therapy cost?
No one cares about their mental health
in the apocalypse,
post-apocalyptic world.
Like,
no one cares.
This is a function of writers not being able to remove themselves from the current year and put themselves in the mind of what somebody might be going through at that time.
It's just absolutely insane. I don't recall it. Please correct me, but I do not recall there being any scenes of Joel in a therapy session in the games. However, it's been a long time since I watched anyone play it, so
if you wanted to do a storyline in a post-apocalyptic world where two people are on some type of journey together and one of them used to be a therapist, that could be kind of interesting.
A flashbacks scene?
Yes. To Joel in therapy, maybe to show ways in which the current story parallels something that happened to him in his past. That's 100% believable. But I'm just picturing like a makeshift tent with like a fake doctor sign that was made out of scraps of wood. And then
she has like a kitchen timer in the corner. And she's watching how much time they have left.
And he has to come in with rounds of ammunition and MREs to trade for time.
If he wants 5 more minutes, he'll have to offer her more ammunition.
The whole point of therapy was like life is regimented and you can use regimented techniques like going to therapy along with like medication and actively working like within workbooks, like if you're doing DBT training, because life is so structured. Life is not structured. He's not going back and then using all of those techniques because he has to worry about staying alive.
Yeah.
Actually, it'd be even cooler if then she's she ends up being the one who kills him rather than Abby.
We have no concerns about our survival these days, which is exactly why we have a therapy-obsessed culture, and it is shining through in the way they wrote this.
He just won't shut up, so she beats him to death with a golf club.
Now they get to Abby. Speaking of the golf club, the character is noted to be much more muscular in the game than the actress Caitlin Dever is in season 2. They say with the violence markedly cut down from the game, showrunners say the need for Abby to be physically imposing wasn't as critical. But no matter who the showrunners cast as Abby, they were bound to spark controversy. The character's stacked physique and brutal story arc placed her at the center of a torrent of online vitriol when hackers leaked hours of footage from Part 2, the game, back in April 2020. As Neil Druckmann and the team at Naughty Dog scrambled through COVID isolation to make the game's June release date, they were inundated with anti-Semitism, misogyny, homophobia, and death threats to themselves and their families.
Do you think it's because they listed all of them that people don't believe them?
I was on board until they got to the death threats part.
Like, even anti-Semitism? I don't even know if any of these people are Jewish. What does that even mean?
It's just a litany of things that are bad that you can't say.
It was just a bunch of people saying that they didn't want Joel to die in the second game and that they don't like Abby as a character. Where is the bigotry in that?
It's like one of those stories you hear, you know it's false because they just list too many things.
They're trying too hard to
if you had said like we were hit with a bunch of misogyny, maybe that's believable. Yeah. But it's like, did they really do all of that stuff to you?
We have a 20 from Henry Orea. Good afternoon, guys. Moving forward, do you think Marvel and DC movies will be less woke? Were you guys surprised Wicked and Emilia Perez didn't win big Oscars? Thoughts? Pop Culture Crisis rocks. Thank you.
I was surprised Wicked didn't win more Oscars. I felt like Wicked was their bridge between smarmy, annoying, very, very, very self-absorbed Hollywood, artsy fartsy garbage, and then the mainstream big budget box office. It was a fantastic bridge for them where it is every bit the artsy stuff they love, but it's also has big box office potential. I was not surprised that Emilia Perez did not win more, but I was surprised that Wicked didn't. As for Marvel and DC, I don't know. Like when you ask those types of questions, I need more like specific examples, like better than this or worse than this. I don't know.
Well,
like,
we're still
all of the DC movies that failed, they didn't fail because they were woke, other than maybe Blue Beetle. They failed because they just weren't that good.
Yeah, DC had some problems with writers,
and I liked most of those.
I think they should have let Zack Snyder do them all because I liked a lot of the DC stuff that he did.
I liked The Flash as like a movie I'll watch one time and never watch again. I liked Aquaman as a movie I'll watch one time and never watch again. Aquaman 2 was like that, but less. And all the other ones were just... Blue Beetle was the only one that was just really annoying to me, and the rest of them were just meh.
Culturally, we're still in a state of limbo because a lot of things are on track to release that were written and filmed and already done and made before Trump's victory. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a lot of things come out that noticeably don't hit where people where people are at right now. If I
wasn't in recovery, I would get drunk and watch that movie G20 with Viola Davis and like review it drunk.
I think actually the making of season 2 of The Last of Us is exactly that example. Like skits that they wrote for SNL before they knew that Trump was going to win the election don't hit. Like they don't make sense.
Correct.
Thank you. Just dancing by myself.
Yeah.
Craig Mazin said to Neil Druckmann in this interview, "I'm still amazed that in the middle of all of it, we would get on a Zoom call and we would talk about how to make this TV show. And here he was, Neil Druckmann, saying, I'm compartmentalizing. That world goes away. Now we work on the show. I wouldn't have been able to get out of bed." And when asked how he managed through this PR crisis, Neil Druckmann says, Not very well at the time. I get hyper fixated on stuff, so when I'm alone and I have time to think, and worse, when I have time to browse, that's when it gets most dangerous. I'm starting to doubt myself. What if I did ruin it? What if I did make a piece of shit? You did.
Yeah.
You done effed up.
And even
you were right.
And even if that's true, it benefits you nothing to like look through all of that. I understand that as a creative, you just have to push forward, give the vision that you want to the world, and then move on with it. And concerning yourself with the endless comments isn't going to do anything because it's already done with.
Cesario JPN sent us a 20. The Last of Us 2 had a Jewish character as the love interest, Dina. The in-game model for the character was uglified from the actual real-life person.
Yeah.
Plus, there was an abandoned synagogue in the game that couldn't be damaged in any way. Okay. I didn't recall that detail, but I guess that's why they listed off anti-Semitism there. Craig Mazin responded to Neil Druckmann saying, "Who cares what they think? I'm telling you it's awesome. Listen to me."
Here's the thing.
Gave him a pep talk.
Here's the thing. When that line works in some respects, but when what people think translates to what they're willing to spend, it does matter.
Right, it has to matter.
It does matter. Like there's this weird area for art where, did you see this thing the other day where the director Osgood Perkins was like, "I'll never make a James Bond movie because fuck Jeff Bezos." I'm like, of all the scumbags in an industry as infested with garbage as Hollywood, you draw the line at Jeff Bezos. Maybe the better option is to just keep your mouth shut and leave all your options open. Even if you believe that, like, who burns bridges that way? Like, who decides where, like, they want you to fund their garbage. They want to make the garbage. And then they want to be mad at you for not spending money on the garbage. And then expect them to be hired again to make more garbage. Without understanding that at a certain point, you are being hired to make a product. You're not being hired to make art. You're being hired to make a product that contains artistic elements. You're not, like, if you want to make art for the sake of art, make it yourself and fund it yourself.
Right.
If other people are being expected to pay for it, it matters what people say.
They say Neil Druckmann has since grown a thick skin to the point that he doesn't think any online hatred for Season 2 of The Last of Us can upset him. He says, "I love the changes that we've made. It's a different version of the story, but the DNA is still there. I'm really curious what their reaction will be." And all we know so far is that Season 3 is probably going to get greenlit, although they haven't even begun thinking about what the story would be, which is insane, as we said earlier. And they are not going to make a third game. That's pretty much... I mean, Neil Druckmann said it without saying it.
Yeah, he said not likely.
The only thing I would say is don't bet on there being more of The Last of Us. This could be it. That means that this is it. They're not going to make a third game. Yeah. But they're going to continue the show and probably do what The Walking Dead did and just start making it up as they go along.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.